Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ from JJ Meets World, the podcast you love to consume, telling you about today's episode featuring Jodie Harvala. Jodie is a psychic medium, and we get to ask her all types of questions about her skill and her gifts. Plus, we get to even ask, what about all the skeptics out there? What do you have to say to them? If you've got questions about being a psychic medium, I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Plus, Tucker and I break down ghosts and our feelings about them. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
When I was a kid, I was never really afraid of ghosts. It's not something that I thought a lot about, this idea of ghosts. I was more afraid of things like gremlins. Mr. T, I thought he might come and get me at some point because he pities the fools. Oh, the ghost of Mr. T. Wouldn't that be amazing? But ghosts are something that we've been obsessed with. And I use that word, and I think it's true form. We have been obsessed with ghosts as a culture for a very long time. Yep. The Greeks, when you passed, would put coins on your eye for the ferryman to take you to the underworld. And we tell stories about people coming back from the dead in ghost form. And I have only had one experience in my life where I feel like, yep, this was some kind of an encounter that I can't explain. And luckily it was at a time before cell phones were really a thing, so that people couldn't get cell phone footage that would freak me out for the rest of my life.
You're not like watching a lot of Ghost Hunters. Is that even a show anymore?
Oh, I think they've got like 20 variations of it. I think there's Ghost Hunters International. There's Ghost Hunters Old Hotels. There's Ghost Hunters Midwest. I'm sure that there's just a ton of different versions of Ghost Hunters. And I'm not ashamed to say that I have several of those on DVD in my home because my wife is a huge fan of it. Right and on. I love so. Aside from the fact that I don't know anything about the ghost world or, why people have a laser thermometer, I do know that I love hearing people talk about it. I love the fact that in the world of ghost hunting, quote unquote, there are no professionals. Like, even if you're a professional, you're not really, like, you didn't go to college for it. There's not an online course that you can take. Well, there probably is some kind of an online course, but not accredited. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. What kind of degree granting institution? I'm not quite sure. I was, as a kid, I was much more afraid of ghosts because I associated ghosts with something nefarious that's going to try and physically hurt you. Right. But now, I remain agnostic at the moment on the topic just because I want to keep my mind open to possibility. But I feel like now, if I had confirmation of ghost activity, I would actually feel pretty good because that would confirm the presence of an afterlife, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I just think there is no way that this world that we live in is 100% explainable by anybody. The fact
Correct.
that even scientists will, tell you, like, yep, we are learning new things all the time. And there we have facts and we have things that are true at that moment, but then they change. It just like animals who've mutated since we began studying them to be able to live further under the ocean or be able to fight a different type of predator. And so as we evolve in all those different ways, I think we evolve in our understanding of maybe there is an afterlife, maybe there are ghosts, maybe there is energy. And our guest today, Jodie Harvala, is someone who has some real definite opinions and some experiences. She is a psychic medium. I got to know Jodie because she came on my radio show one day by recommendation of another friend of mine. And he said, yeah, it's right around Halloween. It's the perfect time to do that. And I had Jodie on, and Jodie leaned over to me right before we started, and I had just met her for the first time ever, and she let me know something that was extremely personal. I had just found out maybe 10 minutes before that I had a friend, or a friend's father had passed away, and my friend had also passed away, and so his dad had shuffled off the mortal coil. And she just she leaned over and she touched my hand and she gave me a little message. And I'll be honest, it freaked me out beyond belief. I had this weird goosebump thing that popped up. And all of a sudden I thought, okay, so something I thought was total and complete hooey. I have enough of a shock right now that I am opening myself up to hearing about what's going on. And she explained a little bit more later. And I was amazed. And some people might think it's a parlor trick, but to be honest, it's what I really needed to hear in that moment too. And that to me is very powerful because it's about taking care of yourself. Jodie includes in this podcast that this is about self-care. And I think it is. I think that this has a lot to do with self-care. So I don't want to get too much into it. Good news, if you've had questions you've wanted to ask over the years, I think Tucker and I do a pretty good job of like, well, how about this? And what about this? And a couple of these and two of those. Right. So you can definitely get into it. She gives her contact information at the end. And previous podcast guests on JJ Meets World have told me about how much they have appreciated Jodie's insight into their own personal energy and what they can do to make their space calming and bring it back to a place of light. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this episode of JJ Meets World features psychic medium Jodie Harvala.
JJ Meets World.
Welcome to the podcast, Jodie Harvala. This is an exciting podcast for me on JJ Meets World because I've had a chance to get to know you a little bit via my day job. And before I get into all the questions and conversation we're going to have, would you let people know what skill you have developed?
Sure. So I am actually a psychic medium. I'm a spiritual teacher and I clear spaces. So I do a lot of work in the woo-woo world. I'm an energy girl. And some people call it skill, some people call it gifts, whatever you want to call it is totally fine with me. I really do feel like I'm a developed medium, a developed psychic, because I didn't realize that I could do some of this stuff when I was a kid. A lot of people have a lot of different experiences when they were kids, and I have some for sure. I definitely have stories, but I feel like my stuff has come in much later in life than a lot of my colleagues and friends and things like that. So, but yeah, I talk to dead people. I do all that cool woo woo stuff.
And one of our conversations we had last time, which I think is interesting, is you've got the belief that everyone has this ability. Just some people stretch that muscle a little more.
Absolutely. Yep. I think everyone has, whether it's intuition, it's that gut feeling, something is just telling me this. Well, how do you know that? I don't know. I just know. Like, I think everyone has different aspects of intuition. And I just really dug in and started to take a lot of courses and classes to develop that within myself. But I do see it, I have people that are brand new in my classes all the time having experiences. And so over the last probably over 10 years now, I have noticed that everyone has this. It just depends if you want to be open to it or not. Because some people, quite honestly, are afraid of it too.
So can you walk us through your personal journey and, when things started to develop, when you finally checked in with yourself and said, yep, this is something that is really happening in my life right now to today?
Yeah, it was really funny because I was actually pregnant with my first son. And I had my first reading with a woman who was kind of like the key psychic around the Fargo Moorhead area. Her name was Susie Eckberg. And she's like, oh, this is so fun. In like 10 years, you're going to be doing what I do. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she goes, oh, you're going to be doing readings and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of crazy. I'm not going to be doing that, but thanks. And she told me my guide's name and all this funny stuff. And I just thought, oh my God, this was so fun. It was so cool. And I was so enamored with anything spiritual growing up. And I had angel wings all around all the time. I mean, I was really into all this stuff, but I had no idea that I would be doing it. And then, gosh, after Foster was born, I was in radio. Actually, I sold radio ads for a really long time and different jobs like that. And I knew I was looking for something different. And I got into recruiting and like job recruiting, employment recruiting. And that was great, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then I started to meet all these psychics and mediums. It was very strange. Like everywhere we went, we would meet a psychic or a medium. And my husband's like, what is happening? I'm like, I don't know, but this is so weird. And I was looking for a new group of friends because I'd kind of outgrown my old friends and we didn't really have the same interests anymore. And I was kind of asking and praying for a new circle of friends. And one of my girlfriends said, hey, you should join this book club I'm doing. And it was studying the Course of Miracles. And if you've ever picked up that book, if you don't know anything about it, you're like, huh, that seems like a little cultish. And I put it on our kitchen table and my husband picked it up and he's like, so if they offer you Kool-Aid, maybe don't drink it, huh? I'm like, I know, I don't know if I should go to that group. Like it was kind of creeping me out. And he goes, I actually think you should go. He goes, I think you're looking for something. I think you should go. And the women that were in the group were awesome. And there was a couple guys in the group too. And by the end of it, I had gone every night, every single Tuesday night for a year. We had studied this book. I wasn't as interested in the book, honestly, but every week we would talk about our miracles we saw every week. And there was something about that. I was like, that's why I went. I still didn't understand the book. I probably still don't understand the book today, but I loved them talking about the miracles that they saw. And I was looking for miracles in my own life and I was seeing them. And then a couple of the people in the group, again, psychic mediums, and they were starting to teach classes and stuff. So I started taking their classes and then I met some more people and I took this really intensive long meditation class and started doing my self-growth work and all of that stuff. And that particular teacher kept calling me a psychic. I'm like, oh my God, stop calling me that, except I could do it. And it came pretty easily to me. And then I met another woman that taught me how to clear homes and clear spaces. And oh my God, I loved that. I was like, holy shit, this is what I've been searching for. And once I learned how to clear spaces, like all the dominoes started to fall. And I just started going, like, I was so obnoxious about it. I just loved it. I'm like, you need your house cleared and you need your house cleared. And I was just all over about it. And then it just slowly developed into a business. And I've been doing that business for, I think it's about 10, maybe 11, 12 years now. Really, really gotten much more solid with my business in the last 5 years, I would say. But I've been developing and growing it for a really long time. It was crazy. The whole thing is crazy. There were so many different stories in the development of my intuition.
One thing that comes to my mind is the fact that like I feel like I've experienced deja vu in my life. And is deja vu something that might be a telling piece to it where it's like I feel familiar with this. I think I know this, but I have never actually been to that place or in that situation physically.
Yeah, I have a couple different ideas about deja vu that I've learned over the years. One of them was taught to me by a great mentor of mine. His name is Wes Hamilton. He's a numerologist out of Minneapolis. And I asked him about that same question. And he's like, we have a life plan before we come down. Like we sit with all our guides and angels and we sit with all our different soul people that are in our life and what we want to work on, what we want to learn. And all these different things. And what was cool about it, he goes, when you have deja vu, it's just kind of a little, yep, you're on the right path. Remember, you put this little point in here to remember to just check in that, yep, this is all right. So I think it's kind of a check in like, yep, we're on the road that we expected to be on. Like, here it is. I also feel like, because I do a lot of stuff with past lives, I do think every once in a while we get into a spot or a space or we travel somewhere and we're like, oh, I have so been here. Like this is so familiar to me. And so I do think some people experience some recognition of different lifetimes that they've lived in different places in the world or different places in the town that they live in. Like they just recognize it, or you recognize people too. I've looked at people, I'm like, hey, I know you. And then we sit for an hour trying to figure out how we know each other. And finally it's like, okay, it must be a past life or something, but I know you. And we've never met ever before. And that has happened to me, 100 times in the last 10 years. So I think there's a lot of different layers to it, but that's kind of where I come from it.
And, Jodie, you described yourself as a psychic medium. Is there a difference between a psychic and a medium, or is everyone a psychic medium?
Well, I think a psychic medium, so my psychic work is I can read the energy within you and around you. Mediumship is talking to dead people. And all mediums are psychics. Not all psychics open up to the mediumship. So some people are psychics, but they don't want to talk to dead people. They're not interested, although sometimes you can't help it. But I think everyone has an aspect of mediumship. If you have a loved one that's passed over, that's died, there are lots of ways to connect with them, whether it's through a sign, whether it's through a reading with someone like me, whether it's through, asking for pennies from heaven or having them come in your dream state or whatever. All of that is connecting with people that have crossed over. Does that make sense?
It does. And so when I was in a play years ago where they had a clairvoyant. So is a clairvoyant just a fancy way of saying this person is tuning into their psychic abilities? So that person might not necessarily be a medium?
Right. So clairvoyants typically see, like they see different things in their head. They can see different visions. Like they're kind of a visionary. My husband's really clairvoyant in his dreams. Like he has a lot of different dreams and stuff that happen. So there's 5 clairs: clairvoyant, clairsentient, clair. See, I'm not going to remember them now that I'm on the spot here. Clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairgustus, which is clear smelling. Sometimes you can smell energy. There's clear. Oh, I don't know them all. I know them. I teach them all the time now. I can't remember them, but there's like 5 basic ways that people come from spirit, or they get the messages from spirit. So hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, also like knowing, seeing pictures in their head, seeing people outside of themselves. There's usually one of 5 that you're really, really strong in, one of your aspects, and then it goes from there. And then it'll develop. Like I used to never see stuff. And like maybe when I was a kid, I saw stuff a little bit, but my basic was like I was such a feeler. Like I feel energy more than anything else. And then the other parts of me develop from there.
Okay, hold on. Dial it back a second.
Yep.
There is a smelling can be one of those.
Yes,
like you
hilarious. Yes.
Smell trouble, or you smell I'm just trying to wrap my brain around how like
how you smell energy.
That triggers something. That's amazing.
It's really crazy. Like it's super fucking cool because not everyone has that. That one is probably one of the least ones that people like recognize. But let's say you have a grandma and she used to drink, like one of my friends, her grandma used to drink like Bud Light or something, some kind of beer. And she goes, when I know she's close, I can smell the beer. And like a lot of people will smell cigarette smoke, and it's like, oh, Grandpa used to smell, smoke cigarettes, but no, come on, no, that's not true.
My grandmother has a very particular perfume that she's always worn.
Yes.
And she's the only person I know that wears it. And she's 92 right now, so she's still with us. But once she moves beyond, I guess that's the hint I'll look for if she ever starts
That could be
haunting me.
one of the hints that you look for. Or people get perfume, they get baking. Like if I'm doing a reading on someone, I'm like, hey, did she used to bake a lot? And they're like, oh my God, she used to bake all the time. And sometimes I'll smell whether they bake cookies or they bake bread or whatever. If I go in a house sometimes to clear a house, sometimes people can smell like a really gross, like a sulfur smell, which then everyone freaks out because I think it's evil. And it's not evil. It's just really dense energy that needs to be cleared. But some people smell that, or they get like a metal smell or a metal taste. That's also spirit being really close to you as well.
Jodie, I'm really curious about like just the execution of like clearing a space, because I've seen, different methods that people have used to like achieve that goal.
Yep.
So what is it exactly that you're doing? What is the effect that the actions you're taking that are having on those that are in the home?
So when I clear spaces, so you can do the sage for sure. You can do singing bowls, you can do crystals, you can do incense, you can do candles, you can do prayer. There's lots and lots and lots of ways to clear a house. When I'm clearing a house, I really go in an energetic space. Like I see the energy, I can feel the energy for the most part. I'm often getting words from spirit saying, oh, look in that closet right there. The energy feels crappy in there. So I'm looking at the energy side of things. And like when the first time my house was cleared was so amazing. I was like, holy shit, what is happening right now? Because I could see the energy, and I wasn't a seer at the time. And I was like, oh my God, I totally see like a fog in the house. And so I'm looking at the parts of the house that are really energy. Like if you are normally a really energetic person, then you come home and you just sit on the couch all night, like your house might be really like soggy with heavy energy. Or if someone has passed away in the house, or you've had a lot of trauma or arguments or different things like that. And so when I do it, number one, I'm looking to see if there's any ghosts in the house, because a lot of people call me and they're like, oh my God, like the pictures are falling off the wall. I'm like, yeah, it's just grandma trying to get a hold of you. Because a lot of people get freaked out, but it's usually the loved one saying, hey, call someone because your house needs a little support. And energetically, our houses just are collectors of energy. And so corners get really smudged up with heavy energy, or basements are almost always really heavy and dense because they just collect energy because there's nowhere for it to go. And so I'm working with the energy of it. So I see usually black energy or gray energy, or, I always ask for having like darker colors so I can tell the difference. And then I have lots of different techniques and tools that I use to clear that energy, whether it's in meditation, whether it's asking my guides and angels to come in and help, whether it's using sage at the time or a prayer or whatever. And so it's hard to explain it because I use the energy. So I'm always transforming energy in some way or another.
So is the idea then behind like having ritual when you go into a space to clear it, like using sage or using prayer, is the idea that using ritual sort of helps like amplify your intentions to communicate that,
Yeah.
the energy needs to leave? Or is there something about sage? Is there something about prayer that has an effect?
The biggest goal that I think a lot of light workers are trying to get across is the higher the vibration that either our inner house, like our physical body, mind, and spirit, or our spaces that we work in or live in, like if you have a higher vibration that you live in or think about or work in, like life is just easier. And so if you have a house, like our house is 100 years old, and our house had a lot of ghosts in it. And when we first moved in the house, like everything was hard. Our whole life was hard. Like we didn't have money, our jobs were hard. We weren't attracting opportunities like we should have. And I always would tell my husband, I'm like, I know we're doing the right things. Like we are hard workers, we're good people, we help people, we're of service often. Like I know something's just not right here. And then our house got cleared and opportunities started to open. Like it didn't cure everything that was wrong, but it gave us some room to breathe, and good things started to happen again because we raised that energy. Then we met people that helped us raise the vibration that like we live in, like we think about, we talk about, how we set our intentions, how we use our spirit. And even right now, so many of us are talking about, like, you guys, seriously, try to get outside every day to raise your vibration. Listen to music, raise your vibration, meditate, raise your vibration, do things like this and have fun and talk about things, because it will help your immune system in a world pandemic. Like, we need people to be up as much as possible because it's going to help to clear a lot of that fear energy that's in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
It's always so weird to talk about energy, but it's the basic goal is to raise the vibration of the space, of the house, of the person, so that they can live a different type of life than they've lived before.
One of the things I'd like to ask you about too, because I think there's a lot of people who are going to be listening to this podcast who, who are just saying, well, it's just like listening to an episode of pure fiction because I don't believe in this. I don't care
100%.
about it.
Yeah.
And then there's also people who might be listening who think, I don't want to believe in this, but enough has happened in my own personal life where I can't help but be curious.
Yep. You can't make this shit up. Yep. And I think people should be a little bit wary of different things like this. I think that's healthy.
So if someone comes up to you and says, okay, so prove it, tell me something that no one else would know, or read my energy and tell me what's going to happen. When someone approaches you with that kind of energy, that sort of skeptical energy, how does it affect your ability?
Well, I kind of have over the years. Now, this is over the years. When I first started, I would really try hard to prove things to people because I wanted them to feel like I did. And these days, if someone said, hey, prove it, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not into proving what I do. Why don't you just go out and ask for spirit just to show you that they're around the next 2 weeks and just see what happens. And if someone comes to like an expo or something, they want a reading and they're like, I'm super skeptical and I don't believe any of this. I'm like, yeah, don't pick my table then. Like, I'm not interested in that kind of skepticism. If you want to come and you're skeptical and maybe probably a little bit fearful and you want to at least tip your toe in and learn about something or have an educated conversation, 100% I'm in. And if someone wants me to, prove something, I'm like, dude, I failed tests all through school. This is not a test that I'm interested in taking. I don't need to do that anymore. But when I first started, 100% tried to prove it to people. And what I've learned was people have to find this on their own. Like, it's not something you can convince someone of. It's not someone that you want to convince anyone of. They need to find it by themselves. Oftentimes, some of the best advice I got was after my mother-in-law died. Actually might have been right before. It might have been right before, but she was in a coma at that time. And I have a lot of friends that talk to people that are dying or dead. And I was like, what's her message? And her message was, let them come to you. And instead of going out and trying to convince people, when people are ready to ask the questions, they'll find me. And I had so many family members reach out after she died for different reasons. One of the younger kids, he's like, you're the only spiritual person I know. Like, my brother died, and can I actually get messages from him? Absolutely. Here, let me teach you something. But if someone's going to come up and be super skeptical and they don't believe in it, that's so okay, because it's just not for them. And I don't think this is for everybody. I think it is for everybody, but I don't think everyone is ready for it or open to it or wants to be. And that's okay. They need to have that space to be in that space, because something along the line down the road, something will happen. They'll be like, well, shit, you can't make that up. Like, you just can't make that up. One of my clients' husbands used to call me voodoo all the time. And now he's a medium, and he's like he's out there as a medium working, and just cracks me up because he used to be super skeptical and totally make fun of his wife doing all this. And now he's out doing it. So I'm like, yep, it all comes around when it needs to.
Have you seen sort of like a common denominator of like what seems to happen when someone changes over from being a skeptic to being a believer?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of people either have a health issue or a death in their life, and they either start to be open to receive healing or open to receive messages, because a lot of it's just about allowing it. If you're not allowing something, it's not going to come to you, right? Like you're totally closed off
Right.
from it. But if someone is on their deathbed and they're like, okay, like I'm going to let it in, and then all of a sudden they start to heal, it's like, holy shit, okay, this does work. And so I think a lot of times it comes around health. A lot of times it comes around money. Like my husband and I were, oh my gosh, we were so broke when we had my house cleared for the first time. And we had a ghost in our house. So I was like, oh my God, I'm getting this house cleared. And I saw the ghost and I knew she was there and all this stuff. And I still don't know how I actually paid for that. So a few days later, we got this huge bill from our electric company. We were like $738.25 behind. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because we just were struggling at that time. It was so long ago and we were in such a struggle. And I left and I went to a friend's house because I was just upset. And by the time I came home, my husband goes, you are not going to believe this. Like I was cleaning out some papers and I found this check from this handyman job I did. And it must have got stuck behind these papers. And it was like $738.25. Like the exact amount. I'm like, holy shit, this stuff works. Like, I don't know
Right.
what happened, but this stuff works. And from that moment, I was like, all right, I just need to be open to this.
I was just going to say that maybe this is too dark. I was thinking of like the long list of people that could be haunting your house, JJ.
Oh, no. And so
JJ's got a lot of friends in spirit.
oh, that's good to know. So, okay,
Uh-huh.
so let me move on to this next part. Both of my parents died in my house. We brought them home. My dad had been suffering from cancer and he passed away here. And my mom had a stroke and she passed away in a different bedroom, opposite sides of the house. But there, I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's coincidence and if it's my mind telling me something or if I'm just not opening myself up to the possibility that this is a communication. But I feel like every now and then something odd happens in my house, something that grabs my attention, like,
Yep.
a floor creak, but isn't something that you can necessarily recreate or prove. It's not
Yep.
like the window was open and the vase fell on the floor. It's just something
Right.
like that. And so I'm curious. So if I have spirits of my parents in my house, but they're not malicious, they're not ruining anything.
Right.
Do
Right.
I clear those out of my house or do I keep them? Are they imprisoned here? What's going on?
No, for sure not. Okay, this is a great question. No, for sure they're not in prison. They're not stuck where they don't need to be. They're in the light where they're supposed to be first and foremost, like 100%. But what happens when people die in a house, there's an emotional like rift of energy, if that makes sense. I mean, you can't not have some kind of emotion when someone passes away in a house, right? It just is. And like my mother-in-law passed away in her house because she had cancer as well, and she passed away at home. And what happens is the grief and the sadness and just kind of you know how when someone's sick they don't have that much energy, right? It's just kind of a slow, dense energy around them. That's the energy that sometimes gets stuck in the house, not necessarily the spirit. So if I was coming to your house, it's not that we want to clear away mom and dad. We don't want to clear away Grandpa Joe. We don't want to clear away that stuff. The spirits that I clear away are maybe the real low vibration, like earthbound spirits that don't want to go into the light because they're probably afraid they're going to go to hell, or they're oftentimes it's just a fear-based thing. They've just they're just fearful they're going to go to hell because they weren't a good enough person or whatever. And so sometimes we do have to cross spirits over, but in a case like yours, like there's a lot of sadness that comes with that, and that ill energy sometimes is really heavy. So what would be cool is to clear the house and show you the higher vibration, and then how much clearer the messages from mom and dad would come through. Like that's the cool part that I like. Like I've had an artist before, like she couldn't create and she wasn't doing very much work, and her house was really just just didn't feel good. And I cleared the house, and within 24 hours, she was creating again. Like
Wow.
that's the kind of stuff you want to clear, because my house. It's really funny. I was talking to my mentor a few months ago. I have a mentor that I talk to every couple of weeks, and I was like, I don't know, I'm just not feeling great, and my work is just dull, and da da da. And at the same time, we both were like, oh shit, I got to clear my house. Like I hadn't cleared my own house, and I work with a lot of energy. So I do clear my house quite a bit. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So I went and cleared my house, and within 24 hours, like everything opened up again. And I was like, oh, see, this is the stuff I wish people would get. So it's not about clearing away the loved ones. Like a lot of people worry about that piece. And that's not, I actually want to enhance that feeling, because then you can get and be more aware of the signs. And oftentimes I'm teaching as I'm clearing, because I want people to understand, like, here, this could be a sign, or this could be your sign, or watch for this and feel for this. But that dense energy when someone passes away in a house, there's just a denseness to it. Like even my mother-in-law's house, I went and stayed for a week after she died, while my father-in-law was traveling, and it was a hard clearing to do, because number one, I was too close to it, honestly, but I could feel the sadness, and I could feel the tears, and I could feel the grief, and I could feel the illness. And once it cleared, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much better. And then my son would sit in the room that she died for months and months and months, because he could feel her spirit in there. And I was like, see, how beautiful is that my kid can go sit in that room and for hours. Like he would not come outside with us. He just wanted to be in there, because I knew he could feel the energy of grandma. And I was like, oh, that is so beautiful.
So, to some extent, when you're talking about that low energy, like when somebody's sick, sick in a house, I totally can understand what that is. Would you say, how's this for a metaphor? If you had a house and every light was on a dimmer switch, and you never turned it all the way up, but you kept it pretty low, so you can't see in all the corners. At night, it's kind of muddied. So, I mean, that to me is a difference that I can really understand. So you're going from being on low dim all the way to the full power of the lights.
Yep. I like it to light up I actually use that analogy all the time. It's like you're on a dimmer switch, and when I leave, I want it to light up like a Christmas tree. Cool. Because I can see it, even if my client can't see it, I can see it. And oftentimes maybe they could feel it, or they could notice something. I have one client that he's so funny. He's like, no, I don't feel it, but I trust. No, I don't feel it, but I trust. I'm like, oh, you are so frustrating to work with, because he doesn't feel what I feel. And he just trusts the process because he's a knower. So he just knows things. He's like, I just know that what you're doing works, so it's fine. And I'm like, okay. But a lot of my clients can feel I'm like, can you feel this? Can you feel that? I do like to try to have people feel that energy as much as I can.
Jodie, I have a question more about communication when it comes to, so I know this is a question that I've asked mediums and psychics before, as I've sort of struggled with my own beliefs, whether I do believe in this or not. And I would say for right now, I'm still agnostic. I just try to leave my mind open and go, hey, I'm open to all ideas.
Sure.
One of the questions that I typically ask, and I hear a lot of skeptics ask, is, when communications happen from the spirit world, it seems to always be in either sort of oblique symbolism, or messing with your home in some way. It seems to never be direct. It seems to never be, hey, what's up? It's grandma.
Right.
How you doing? Hey, I'm dead, but I'm still alive, and we should talk sometime. And for my own part, I really wish the communication would happen that way, because that would clear up a lot of
make my job a lot easier.
Right. So, why do you think that is? Is there a reason behind that?
Well, when you drop your body, then you turn back into energy, right? You're just energy, and energy doesn't, like, our light bulbs don't just talk to us, but they have a hum to them, or they have a sound to them. So to me, it's a way for the energy to come together to create the experience in our human world, so that we can get our attention. They send signs, a million times a day. We might pick up one or two, or if you're really tuned in, up to 20. But I think it's because it's energy, and it's so subtle. And if you're down in the dumps, it's going to be even harder to see it, because your vibration is lower. When you're happy and cheerful, and like it's a wedding, and it's so excited, and the lights flash, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's grandma. Like, they're open to it, right? Gotcha. And in your day-to-day world, they can come through with, triple numbers, like, 777, 888, 444, 1111. They can come through with the pennies from heaven, or different things. Like, I just had a loved one pass away a couple days ago, And one of my friends, again, I
Sorry to
know,
hear that.
yeah, I know that one was a tough one. He like really tough one. And I know a lot of people that talk to dead people. So I'm bound to get readings from people and they're like, oh, he feels like a really gentle giant and he's just a wink away. And he used to wink at us all the time. And in the last 3 days, I've seen so many of the winks and so many like the word wink and people winking online and winks all over. I'm like, oh, it's okay. You're the wink guy. Okay, got it, Jim. So I do think that it's an energy thing, and they have to talk in our language. We don't know how to talk light language. I always felt light language, but we don't know how to talk it. We don't know how to hear it. We don't know how to tune into it unless you really are working on your intuition. And then it's still really subtle. Now, some mediums really do hear it very clearly, like, hey, tell JJ his house is just fine. Like they can hear that. The majority that I've met don't get the messages that way. I do not at all. Mine is much more emotional, but I really do think it's because it's an energy thing and they're on an energy plane and we're on a physical plane.
And I think JJ and I's generation, we might be at a little bit of a disadvantage because we grew up with Ghost Rider on PBS.
Right? Exactly.
And so we're used to seeing a ghost like literally just put letters out on the table and it'll rearrange them, or get on your computer and he'll just type it out for you.
Yep. And those weird things happen too. I've heard lots and lots and lots of different stories. So I do think things like that can happen. It's not the majority of the time though.
Gotcha.
What about the people who are afraid of this? So the people who just, if fear consumes them in the idea that, oh, everything I've ever been told is once you shuffle off that mortal coil, that's it, that's the end. And so the idea of getting messages and feelings from another realm or world is scary to them.
For sure. It can be terrifying. I used to have a lot of fear growing up because I would feel things. I just didn't know what I was feeling, right? I just had no idea what I was feeling. I just knew what I felt didn't feel good. And I love to talk to people that are afraid of spirit or afraid of energy or afraid of this kind of stuff, because I really feel like one of my jobs is to educate people. Take a class with someone that feels safe to you, get some education so you can understand, like, oh, well, when I went in the basements, this is, I used to be so scared of basements when I was growing up. And now that's like where I start with my clearings. But what I didn't get was I was just feeling the denser energy. But people think that dense energy is evil or demons or this or that. And I'm like, it's just energy void of light. Like we are just bringing more light to it. And so I like to educate people like that. I like to get them to understand some different aspects of energy so they have an understanding. So it's so much about education, and people's beliefs. A lot of people think I'm evil. I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but if you ever have questions, I'm still open to chatting with you about it if you're respectful. But a lot of people grew up with those beliefs, and that's tough. But I have a lot of people that grew up with some really strong beliefs, and now they've figured out how to bridge both sides. They can bridge the religious beliefs, they can bridge the spiritual beliefs. They take what works from both sides, and then they can create their own belief.
I think that, when I think of it, I still get scared. So like I had said, if I hear something in my house, if the floor creaks and there's nobody standing there and it happens in the middle of the night, I'm the first guy to rush off and hide under the covers because I just don't know what to do. And after my dad passed away, I remember maybe a year and a half later, I got sick with a bad winter cold, and I decided to take some NyQuil. And I've always been a lightweight when it comes to any kind of
chemicals,
drug. Yeah, chemicals.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Any chemical. So a Tylenol PM, it's like, I will see you guys 18 hours later.
See you later.
So I remember vividly taking a dose of this NyQuil and falling asleep, and it being just an incredibly heavy sleep. And in my dream, I talked to my dad, and I talked to him about what was going on in my life at that point. And he kind of made some comments about some things and gave me his insight on stuff, the things a dad would normally tell a son, the
Yep.
type of a conversation. And when I woke up, I I had to convince myself that, like, yep, dad is still dead. It was incredibly vivid, the type of thing where you get out of it and you think, gosh, am I remembering something that happened? No, it couldn't have happened, because I was talking about things that have taken place after his passing. And I couldn't believe it. And it happens whenever I take something like NyQuil. And so I said, well, I don't want to ruin this. After the second time it happened, I thought I need to really limit the amount of times I take NyQuil, because maybe there's only so many interactions I'm allowed to have in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste any of these.
Yep. So what's happening so it's typical to have things like that from loved ones in like a meditative state. And NyQuil for you puts you in that kind of state. It just chemically puts you there, which is not the healthiest place to do this work. Or, I have a lot of people that smoke weed and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's just, I don't love that opening. It works for people because it helps them drop their walls. But I would rather take someone through a meditation, to be honest. I'll just be real clear about that. But what's happening is you're getting visitations from your dad because it's the one and only time you let your control down enough to let that energy come through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's so real. So visitations are real. Like there's no, like it is, I can't believe it. That was so real, right? Like that's the feeling of visitation. Some people will have nightmares or bad dreams, and they think that something's wrong with dad. He's not where he needs to be. He's not in the light. Is he stuck somewhere? And I'm like, that's just your fears coming out in a nightmare or a bad dream. So it's different. Visitation is just what you explained. Like I just like, it was just so real. Like that's a visitation because it's always loving. It's safe. They often talk about what's currently happening. You just get there through, you're just NyQuil is your gate. Meditation would probably work too after a while, or sometimes just in normal sleep, they can come too. Yours just happens to come at a time when you just let your guard down.
Hey, have you ever had an experience yourself where, it doesn't seem like this is something you're afraid of. It seems like something you've really, honed into over the years. Have you ever had fear?
Oh, yeah. When I first started this, oh my gosh, I was always afraid. I grew up really fear-based, though. Like I was a really fear-based person. Like that's just, oh my God, it's going to rain. There's going to be a tornado. Like I was always very fear-based. And
I'm there with you. That was me, especially in third grade.
Yes,
I remember
ridiculous.
Hearing tornado sirens going off and just losing my mind.
Yes, always fear-based. And so when I first started this, what happens if you have a lot of fear, the experiences that you have tend to be more scary because you're attracting kind of that kind of vibration. It doesn't mean you're making it happen, but it's an attraction. The more classes I took, the more I had education, the more I understood, the less fear that I had. Now it's more like it's day to day. It's my life. Like I do this stuff all day long, every day. So I don't have that fear factor that I had. I would say even 5 years ago, I still had things where I was like, "Ooh, wait a second." But I had a lot of support and brought in a lot of teachers so that I've always had somebody that I can say, okay, hey, let me talk about this because this happened, and because I want to be open to that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is really important for me to be open to, obviously for my work, for obvious reasons, but even just in life. I lose a loved one. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I can connect with them on a different way. My dad's on hospice and I'm like, I'm so happy that I know that whenever he does go, I still have a connection with him. So that takes some of that fear piece away. But yeah, I had a lot of creepy things that used to happen because I just didn't understand what was happening. I just have a bigger understanding now, so it doesn't scare me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
years ago,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tucker.
JJ and I have a buddy who a number of years ago, unfortunately took his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And the day that I found out, that night, I had a dream where I ran into him. I was at a bowling alley and a bunch of our friends were there and he was there.
Yeah.
And he was standing at the front of his lane and just sort of staring off into the distance. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey man, we all miss you. We hope you're okay." And we gave each other a hug and I woke up. And ever since then, I've thought about, was that real? Was that him?
Absolutely. Totally was him.
Was that my brain doing it? And I actually kind of decided that I'm actually comfortable with both explanations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable with the explanation that my brain created that whole cloth because I needed closure.
Right.
And I'm comfortable with the explanation that was him, and that that bowling alley was a place where we were all meeting with him or connecting with him or something. And the thing is, I don't even have a memory of bowling with him. For some reason, that was the space that it put us
probably
in.
were just safe, and he could bring a lot of energy in at the same time.
Right.
It's a safe spot.
Right. But after that dream, I mean, regardless of what created it, I felt more at peace with it because I had an opportunity to say something to him,
Yep. And I hear that from a lot of clients. I've had, I grew away from a lot of friends when I got into this work because they all thought I was crazy. And they just remember, 20-year-old drunk Jodie. And then I was like, hey, I can talk to dead people. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. But then parents started to pass away, and moms would get sick and they would lose someone, and then they would reach out and be like, so listen, this weird thing happened. And I'm like, yep, that's it. And that's how people oftentimes find an opening for the spiritual world, because it is a part of our world. It just is. But I do really work a lot with that. Some of my stuff, my marketing is about becoming fearless. And it's not that I don't have fear. It's just that I understand it so much more. And then I don't live in that fear-based place anymore.
So then in this world of our current world of social distancing and having to kind of stay away from each other, which I would assume then actually prevents you from going into people's homes. I mean, of the services you do, what are you able to do at a distance? I mean, are you able to clear someone's home without actually being in the home, or do you have to kind of put that on pause until we can all see each other again?
Great question. I actually can do pretty much all of my work at a distance. I do most of my clearings at this point, because most of my clients are around the country. I can do remote clearings, which means I do it from a distance, because I'm tuning into the energy. It's just like a radio station. I'm just tuning into their station. And that's always hard to explain to people, but they're like, oh, okay. And just when when I'm talking to your loved ones, like I'm tuning into their station. So I can still do it. I think right now, a lot of my work is on pause because people are just not they're holding on to their money because we don't know what's going to happen, right? Like this is an unprecedented time in our world. So I'm doing a lot of free things. Like I'm doing a clearing class if people want to learn how to clear their space. I'm doing it, pay what you want. And that's coming up in April, but that's something I can do online, so I can still connect with people. I can still have a group, a community. I think even though we can't see each other in people, my work is becoming as much about service as I can. I still got my own bills to pay, but I have a lot of access to people and can help them with some of this energy. Anxiety is energy, and so many people are feeling fear and anxiousness. I'm like, well, shit, I've been training for this for 10 years. Like, if fear and anxiousness was like my deal. So, hey, let me talk to you about some of this. I got a whole shit ton of tools. And we kind of are laughing about that piece because so many of us are like, seriously, we've been training for this to help people because we all had so much fear, so much anxiety, so much anger, so much stuff in our lives. And now we're like, hey, you know what? This might help you in this really scary time. Like, let me see if I can support you in some way. So I am still working. I definitely still have clients and all of that good stuff. And most of it, almost all of it, except my in-person classes and in-person clearings, I can still do remotely.
What about, so obviously there have been a lot of different portrayals of psychics and mediums over the years in pop culture. Is there anything that you feel kind of gets it right, even if it is a little more bigger and fictionalized? But I'm thinking of Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost versus the show Medium versus Sixth Sense. There you go. Is there anything that you've ever seen where you're like, wow, it's like someone really got this on the
Ghost
nose?
Dad.
Yeah, I think some of them get some of it right most of the time. I do think they bring in the weirdness of it because it is weird. Like that was probably some of the best advice I ever got long ago when you're like in a crowd and everyone's like, well, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a psychic. I'd be like, oh, how do I tell people this? And one of my friends was like, just be the weird one in the room. Like that's okay. And so I think they get the portrayal that it's the weirdness of it.
We get similar responses for being podcasters.
Right? I mean, it's like, oh, now I have to tell people what I do. Now I don't mind. Like now I use it more for shock value because it's fun. Because I'm in, like I've done it for so long. I'm like, what am I going to say? I think some of the things I think it's easier to tell what I don't like. You know, what I don't love that it's always a scary, awful thing. You know, I don't love that piece. I don't love that the ghost hunters go out and stir up the spirits and then they don't like do anything for them or calm them or, you know, I think it's disrespectful in a lot of ways. I don't love that part. I think, you know, like some of the newer shows like Long Island Medium, I think that one's hilarious. I think she's a fantastic medium, like amazing. I think she got a lot of that right, like how they did it and how, you know, she walks in a coffee shop and she's doing like that happens sometimes. Like you're looking at someone going, oh, I so have something for you. You know, I don't know if I should give it to you, but I so have something for you. So I think they did that really like her show when I first started watching it, I thought was fantastic. I think in the movies, I think Whoopi Goldberg, I think that's kind of true because sometimes if a spirit has a message for somebody, like I will get stuck and keep repeating things until they get the message. I'm like, okay, let me say it another way. Let me see if you get this. So kind of feeling that trapped by spirit sometimes. Every once in a while that does happen. I think that's true too.
What about has there ever been a time where you said I'm trying to think of like something kind of like a Jedi and his Padawan. Has there ever been a moment where you come into contact with someone and be like, you have an extreme ability and I don't know if you have explored it at all yet. And you kind of, you know, you talk a lot about how you have mentors. Have you started mentoring a new generation?
For sure. Yes, for sure. It's actually right now I have a lot of people I'm mentoring and it's probably some of my most rewarding work. I love it because if I find somebody and they're in that right spot and they just need someone to, it's almost like you need someone to give you permission. You really don't, but it's what it feels like for someone just to say, hey, you know how to do this, right? And they're like, yeah, like, damn it. Yeah, I know how to do it, but I don't like it because I can't manage it. So I actually have a lot of people that I mentor. I do a lot of classes and things like that. I've definitely met people where I'm like, listen, like, I really feel like this is something that you're going into. And usually they're like, yeah, I know. I just don't know quite how to do it. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me help you the way my mentors helped me. Because I think this, if you're going to do this full time, I do think you need a mentor or several. Because there are times where it's like, oh no, well, this happened. What do I do with this? Like, what is this energy that I'm feeling? And I have no idea what to do with it. So I absolutely, you know, I usually have 2 teens for whatever reason. There's always 2 teens that I'm working with, like 19, not like 12, 13, but like 19, 20-year-olds. I work with a lot of people that are just starting their business. I tend to attract those people because I know how to work that part. I know how to build a business in that way. And I can tell them all the things I did wrong, which is always fun to talk about. So I do think that there is a generation coming in and they do need mentors and teachers. So that's why I'm so obnoxious about my work, because I think people need support. And support has been the biggest thing for me building my own stuff too.
You know, we talked a lot in this podcast about energy. Can energy cross over other than just a feeling? Like, have you ever had a physical interaction?
Yeah, actually, when I actually get that a lot. I can feel, like, I was calling Archangel Michael and I can feel his energy. I can feel my guide's energy. So I have a lot of that, but I was clearing a business one time that shall remain nameless, but they had a ghost on the property and she was not a happy ghost. She was pretty pissed off, to be honest. And I was clearing the spot and I went to bend down to do something. And the GM comes flying down the stairs and he's like, oh my God, be careful, be careful, be careful. And like this spirit kind of pushed me. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I knew going there that that spirit was upset. She wasn't mean. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't trying to kill me or any of that kind of stuff. But it did knock me off my head a little bit. I was like, we're going to call my mentor for a second, just so I had some support. And she really was just so angry because this land was meant to be family land and this restaurant had built on it and all this kind of stuff. So we were able to calm her down. But that was probably my most memorable, where I actually like was physically pushed. And I was like, holy shit, what are you doing? There is no pushing. There's no pushing in clearing houses. Like, no, you don't get to do that. But a lot of my clients feel hands on their, like in their beds after their husband passed, or they can feel their animals in the bed, like still in their spot, sleeping by their feet and things like that. So that actually happens a lot for people.
See, that would be the moment where I'm like, peace out, and it'd be like a cartoon. You'd see the like dust of my outline while I'd be gone.
But that's why I want to talk about it, so that you can understand it's just energy. It's just energy. And when because I used to be like that, like JJ, I was so like that. And one of my girlfriends who's a medium, she finally texted me one night. She goes, "What exactly do you think they're going to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not sure. It just freaks me out." And she's like, "Yeah, but what do you think they're actually gonna do?" I'm like, "Oh, I guess they really can't do anything. They're just energy." And she's like, "Yeah, like let it go." And I was like, "Oh," and it was really helpful because it was really funny. It was at my mother-in-law's house and the lights kept blinking on and off. And I knew it was her. Like I knew it. But I was freaked out to go to bed. And my friend must have just kept tuning into me. And she's like, seriously, she's laughing, going, "What do you think I'm going to do to you? Like, love you too much? Like, what is your problem?" So I think that's where I want to bring some levity into it too, because they just want you to know that they're still there.
When I think of someone who's a psychic medium, I'm ready for you to come in going, ah, ha, ha.
Yep.
And, I think you said woo woo earlier today, and I
Yep.
expect you to wear a cape and just this. But I mean, even listening to you talk, you could be talking about PTA crap in the same tone, in the same cadence, using the same type of words, but instead we're talking about communicating and the acceptance of this energy that we can not necessarily control, but we can put some guidelines and speed bumps up to. And it amazes me. Like I also think like, oh, she probably lives in a lighthouse somewhere. But you probably have like you've got a house, you've got kids, you've got a husband.
House. Yep, pretty normal. I got 2 cats, I got 2 mouthy teenagers, a mouthy husband. I do have blue hair, so I have a little bit of that stuff in there. I have bright blue hair, but yeah, I have a pretty normal life. I like really normal. And I think people can relate to that. I think, and for me, that's been a gift for my business because people are like, "Oh, you're normal." I'm like, well, not really, but I can be relatable. My kids are naughty and, we fight over chores and all that kind of stuff. So I always try to tell people about my life and my family life because it is pretty normal. I just happen to have a connection to dead people. I happen to have a really good connection to intuition. I love to teach. I love to clear spaces. But yeah, it is funny. And I know some people like that. I know people that wear the capes. I know the people that come in and do the stuff. Like I know all those people too. And they're a riot to be around.
Oh, I can only imagine. But to me, that is the stereotype, right? That's what I think
For sure, 100%.
so
yeah.
I think it just goes along with what you've been saying, which is everyone has this ability. Some people just turn it up better than other people.
Yep.
And if your way of getting in touch with something is wearing a wide brim fedora everywhere you go, that's what you need.
Yeah.
Jodie, I've got another question. You had also said too, like I've got a lot of friends in the spirit world. What does that mean?
Well, I think, like I said, I think you have had some death in your life for sure. And some of it, I know you told me about some of it, but like I don't think I knew your mom and dad passed away. I don't think I knew that part, but I feel lots and lots and lots of angels around you, like so many angels. And I wonder if you like to feel safe in your life because it feels like you call them in a lot. Maybe not consciously, but it's kind of an energy. I can pick that out in people because I'm like, oh, you have so many angels. You must like to feel safe. And that was one of the things for me. I always wanted to feel safe when I did this work. So I was like, all right, angels, like I need a million around. Just come on in. Just come on in. And you just feel like you have a lot of really amazing angels. And I don't know if you've had a lot of people that have passed away, but it feels like it. It just feels like you have quite the crew up there.
I do a lot of stuff that is outside of the average comfort zone for most people, whether it's, the fact that I'm in front of a microphone for 3 hours every day, or I step onto stage in front of complete strangers and have to make up stuff. And so I can definitely understand the idea that I probably do call in a lot of those. I call in a lot of support because I'm doing a lot of things that are outside of a
and
comfort zone.
exposed. You expose yourself a lot with all that work. And I see that with people that are vulnerable and they expose themselves and they're out in the open and they're doing that public work and stuff. They tend to have a lot. Not that people that don't have a lot of angels, but I do pick up on that. Like there's a lot of angels around people that put themselves out there.
Jodie, most of your clients, when they, or like a brand new client, when they call, do you hear this a lot? Do you hear, I've wanted to do this for a long time, but it took me a while to convince myself that I should move forward?
All the time. Yes. All the time. And it is, because it's a creepy thing to do when you've never done it before and they don't know what to expect, and they don't know if they want to hear from their loved one, but they kind of do, but not really, because it freaks them out. And then they don't really want to know. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty normal. And a lot of times I'll do like mini galleries and things like that, so people can just come and be in a group. And I do little mini readings for people. Sometimes that's a nice step, or they take a class. But yeah, that's pretty typical. That's pretty normal. I have a lot of people that, a husband will pass away and they'll go for 5 years and then they'll be like, okay, it's time. I don't know why it's time. I've never wanted to do this before, but now it's time. So yeah, that's pretty normal.
I've got another weird question for you. Well, I'm sure these are all normal questions to you, I'm sure.
I love it though.
Jodie, I was watching a program where a psychic medium was talking about how they have done a lot of work with people who've lost limbs. And the reasoning behind it was that we all hear about phantom pains. So if someone loses an arm in an accident, they can feel those phantom pains. And their belief was, well, there's still energy. This is a part of you, and your energy is still trying to claim that part that's there. It's like reaching out and, trying to pull a cloud or nail a wave onto the shore. And so they do clearings for people who've been amputees or who have lost limbs in that way. And they said it's just sort of like, instead of passing away, it's like it's a tiered process for this individual. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
No, but that's fascinating, and it totally makes complete sense to me. 100%. I've not ever done anything like that, but I would totally do that. Because I do. As soon as you said it, I'm like, well, yeah, it's their energy, because their physical arm might not be there, but the energy is still there. Exactly like when you die, your body isn't still with you, but that energy still is. And I think there's probably some emotional components to that too. So as those people are helping them clear the energy of that limb, they're probably helping them clear some of the heavier emotion around losing the limb as well. I think it's a tiered, like you said, it's a tiered process. But yeah, I think that'd be fascinating to help someone with. I think that'd be help. And I bet it helps. I bet it helps a lot for people like that, because it is an energy thing.
And, kind of as we're wrapping this thing up, thank you very much for your time, Jodie. And I'm going to let you get.
I can talk about this stuff all day.
Oh, I bet you could. What about pets?
Yes, our pets are so amazing. So pets can for sure come through. I actually definitely have had readings where the pets came through. I have 2 really amazing magical kitties that always come in before I'm on. Like Ruby was in here before we jumped on. Charlie likes to come in when I'm clearing houses and stuff. But our dogs are here to really spread the joy around. Cats are around to help transmute negative energy. So if a cat is sitting on your chest, like let them sit there, because they are helping your body transmute emotion, whether it's there's so much fear right now. So a lot of people are their pets are all over them. I'm like, let your pets be near you. They're trying to help. But pets can come through just like our loved ones can.
That's so interesting.
They often come through really quickly. And what I hear from pets a lot, and this sometimes is helpful for pet owners and sometimes not. But what I hear from pets often is, you do not need to grieve me like you grieve a human being. Like a lot of people, their spouse will pass and they'll, take, 5-10 years before they let love in again. And the pet is like, go out and buy another cat today. Like, it's fine. Like, we're here for a reason. Once our reason's done, we leave, and then you can go get someone else because we're totally cool with that. So I get a lot of different messages around grieving them. Like I had a couple that I was like, oh my God, you guys have to go get another cat. Like, you guys need cats in your life. Oh, we need to wait. What just happened? We have to grieve for a couple of years. I'm like, oh no, so not what your cat wants for you. And then they finally, a couple of years, got new kitties, and they were like, oh, why did we wait so long? I'm like, exactly. They really are here to support us. Even the birds in the neighborhood, animals out in the world are absolutely here to help humans, like, keep their shit together.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yep.
Okay, Jodie Harvala, you've been an amazing guest here on JJ Meets World, and I have a feeling that we'll reach out to you again in the future
I hope
for another
so.
episode.
Heck yeah.
And I also, I've known a bunch of people in my personal life who, when I mention your name, they light up immediately and they go like, I know Jodie. I talked to Jodie. And I think that you have an amazing presence about yourself. And
thank you.
I think it comes through even through this podcast. Even if you're not in the physical space with you, people can understand that. If people want to know more about what you do, they're interested in an expo, they're interested in their own skill, or they need your help with something. How is the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So can I do a couple of shameless plugs?
Please
and then I'll
do.
give my website.
Please
okay,
do.
So there's two cool things that are going on. So we had to cancel all our expos due to the coronavirus, of course. Supposedly we're going to have the Fargo one on May. Let's see, what did we say? May 30th. That might change, honestly, just because we want to keep people safe. But just so people know, we do have expos normally in the spring and the fall. But what I decided to do was I'm doing a course online called Cut the Clutter and Chaos in Your Home. And it's for people that want to kind of step in and think about their house and maybe want to learn how to clear energy and do some of this stuff and get some education. And I'm doing it at a name your price. Like, you get to put in whatever you can afford at the time, because right now so many people are struggling financially. And I would much rather have a huge course than just to try to get people to pay full price. So I just did full price from $1 on up. You can get it on my website, which is www.jodieharvala.com. And it should pop right up. My Angela designer girl, she was going to do that for us. But that's a fun way, and it's a 4-week class. It's online. There's videos. I'm going to be on Facebook Live and things like that. So it's a super fun course, and it's spring cleaning. So you'll actually get some clutter work in there. You'll get some energy work in there. We're going to work in some clutter on our minds, which I think is all stuff that could help people over the next few weeks, because there's a lot going out in the world. But yeah, my website, Facebook, I'm on Facebook, and I'm working on getting on Instagram more and more. So kind of the main pieces, but website is where they can read more about my services.
That is awesome. And of course, I think if people open themselves up, they can probably have a lot of questions answered, or at least explored when talking with you.
Yep. And I would love to help if people have questions. Absolutely book a reading. I have lots of time right now. There's lots of time on my plate right now. And I hope that people really do listen to the piece about raising your vibration right now. And it's not easy. But some quick little tips before we leave, like, get outside every day. Like, we finally broke like the 50-degree mark yesterday. So it's a lot nicer to get outside. Getting outside, getting out of your house, go, sit on your front step or whatever, listen to music, open your windows, meditate. Even if you've never meditated before, YouTube has a ton of guided meditations. Self-care is super important in such a stressful place that we are in a world right now.
Amen, sister.
Yep.
Jodie, thank you so much. And we'll see you again on another episode of JJ Meets World.
Thank you, guys.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. I think the real test for someone who thinks that they can feel your energy is for them to grab your hands, and if they're wet, they don't pull away.